Warning, this isn't a story about heartbreak, it's about payback. The moment I saw the messages from Derek from marketing on my wife Sarah's laptop, my world didn't just crack, it atomized. The late nights, she said, were for her big promotion, the new lingerie that was never for me. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a coffin lid. For a week I was a ghost in my own home, consumed by a rage so cold it burned. Forgiveness, reconciliation, those words felt like a foreign language. She was about to give the presentation of her career, the one that would supposedly secure our future. Little did she know I had made a few edits to her PowerPoint. You think you know how this ends? Think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever faced a betrayal that made you want to burn it all down? What's your ultimate revenge fantasy or your path to healing? Let's share some stories. Part 1: The lingering scent of a lie. Our marriage had become a comfortable silence. At 47, I figured that's what 15 years of shared bills, suburban barbecues, and raising a daughter now off to college was supposed to feel like. I'm a civil engineer, a man who builds bridges, for God's sake. I deal in stress tolerances and load-bearing capacities. I believed our foundation was solid, built on a bedrock of shared history and mutual respect. I was a fool. The first crack was subtle, almost imperceptible. It was the scent of a cologne that wasn't mine. I first noticed it on a scarf Sarah had tossed onto the armchair in our bedroom. It was a sharp, citrusy scent, nothing like the woody, earthy fragrance I'd worn since we met. When I asked her about it, she'd laughed it off, her eyes not quite meeting mine. Oh, that's probably just from someone at the office, honey. You know how those sales guys bathe in the stuff. And I, the trusting husband, the man who believed in the structural integrity of his own life, accepted it. My name is Marcus, by the way, and I'm about as average as they come. A bit of a paunch from too many weekend beers, a receding hairline I've made my peace with, and a love for my wife that, until recently, I considered the one unwavering constant in my universe. I was the steady, reliable one. Sarah was the fire. She was ambitious, a marketing executive at a high-powered tech firm, always chasing the next big win, the next promotion. I admired her drive, even when it meant late nights at the office and dinners eaten alone. I thought we were a team, that her success was our success. I was her biggest cheerleader, the guy holding the fort down at home, making sure the lawn was mowed and the leaky faucet was fixed. The signs, in retrospect, were as subtle as a sledgehammer. The way she started guarding her phone, angling the screen away from me with a casualness that was anything but. The sudden flurry of work emergencies on Friday nights. The gym membership that resulted in a toned physique, but never seemed to involve any actual sweat-stained gym clothes in the laundry. She'd come home glowing, attributing it to a killer spin class, and I'd feel a pang of something I couldn't name. It wasn't quite suspicion, not yet. It was a low-grade hum of anxiety, a feeling of being on the outside of a private joke. You seem distant, Sarah, I'd say as we sat on the couch, the blue light of the TV flickering across the chasm that had opened between us. Just stressed, Marcus, she'd reply, her fingers tapping away at her phone. This presentation is everything. It's a game changer for me. The presentation. It was all she talked about. A massive pitch to a new client that could land her a senior vice president position. She was the team lead, the star player. Our future, she'd said, was riding on it. I was proud of her, genuinely, but I was also lonely. Our daughter, Maya, was in her freshman year at Berkeley, and the empty nest syndrome had hit me harder than I'd expected. The house felt cavernous, our conversations transactional. We were roommates who shared a bed. The dark humor of it all wasn't lost on me. I designed structures meant to withstand earthquakes, yet the foundations of my own home were crumbling beneath my feet, and I was oblivious. I'd tell myself I was being paranoid, that I was just feeling insecure now that Maya was gone. Sarah was a beautiful woman, always had been. At 44, she was more radiant than ever. She had a new haircut, a new wardrobe, a new vibrancy. A vibrancy that I was beginning to realize had nothing to do with me. The real turning point came on a Tuesday night. Sarah was working late, as usual. I was paying some bills online when I noticed an email notification pop up on our shared tablet. It was from a florist, a receipt. A bouquet of expensive, exotic flowers I'd never seen in our house sent to her office. The sender's name, Derek Albright. The message on the gift card read, Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the encore. The screen blurred. The carefully constructed world I inhabited, the one with the manicured lawn and the two cars in the garage and the wife I loved, tilted on its axis. Derek from marketing. The name was familiar. Sarah had mentioned him in passing. A work friend, a great guy, a lie, the citrusy cologne, the late nights, the glowing skin, it all coalesced into a single, sickening point of clarity. My wife was having an affair. The silence in our house was no longer comfortable. It was the sound of betrayal, and in that silence, something inside me, something I didn't know existed, began to wake up. The bridge builder was about to become a demolition expert. Part 2, The Digital Footprints of Deceit. For the next 48 hours, I existed in a state of suspended animation. I went to work, I reviewed blueprints, I discussed load-bearing capacities, all on autopilot. My body was going through the motions, but my mind was a maelstrom of shock, rage, and a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight on my chest. I couldn't eat. Sleep was a series of fragmented nightmares. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw a stranger. I saw her laughing with him, touching him, sharing a part of herself that was supposed to be mine. The urge to confront her was a roaring fire in my gut. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand answers. But a colder, more calculating part of my brain, the part that solves complex engineering problems, took over. A messy, emotional confrontation would give her control. She'd cry, she'd deny, she'd gaslight me until I was the one apologizing. I'd seen it happen to friends. No, I needed proof, irrefutable, undeniable proof. I needed to understand the scope of this betrayal before I blew our world to pieces. The opportunity came on a Friday night. Sarah had another work dinner. She kissed me goodbye, a peck on the cheek that felt like a slap in the face. "Don't wait up, honey, it's going to be a late one. We're finalizing the presentation." The lie was so effortless, so practiced, it made my blood run cold. Her laptop was on her desk in our home office, the one I had built for her. I felt a tremor of guilt as my hand hovered over the trackpad, but it was quickly extinguished by the fire of my righteous anger. I was not the one who had broken our vows. Her password was Maya's birthday. The irony was a bitter pill. It didn't take long, she hadn't even bothered to log out of her personal email. There it was, an entire shadow life laid bare in pixels and text, emails from Derek going back months. Flirtatious banter that quickly escalated into explicit fantasies. They talked about everything. Their spouses, their frustrations, their desires. He was married too. They were two cliches playing a dangerous and pathetic game. Then I found the chat history. It was a fire hose of filth and betrayal. They'd been meeting up for months. Hotels, his apartment when his wife was out of town, even on one occasion our own bed. I had to stop reading, my vision tunneling as a wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled to the bathroom and retched, my body convulsing with the poison of her deceit. After I composed myself, I went back to the laptop, a cold, hard resolve solidifying in my gut. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was an investigator. I opened her cloud storage, searching for a folder innocuously labeled Project X. It wasn't project files. It was pictures, dozens of them. Selfies of her and Derek, wrapped in hotel sheets, grinning at the camera. Pictures of him that she had taken, his smug face a mask of self-satisfaction. There was a video, too. I couldn't bring myself to watch it, but the real goldmine was in a subfolder. It was filled with screenshots. Screenshots of their text conversations, hundreds of them, raw, uncensored, and utterly damning. "Sarah, Marcus is so predictable. He thinks my spin class is why I'm so happy lately, if only he knew. Derek, let him build his bridges. You and I are building something much more fun. Sarah, just landed the pitch. I'm celebrating with you tonight. My place, he's going to his mother S. Derek, can't wait to see my future SVP in action, and out of that power suit." They mocked me, they laughed at my trust, my loyalty, my predictability. They had used my stability as the launchpad for their sordid little adventure. Each message was a fresh stab in the heart. But with each stab, my grief was slowly being forged into something else, something harder, sharper, something that looked a lot like vengeance. I spent the next 2 hours meticulously downloading everything. The emails, the pictures, the screenshots. I created a new folder on a thumb drive, a digital archive of my own personal apocalypse. As I worked, I could hear her words echoing in my head, the ones about her big presentation. The one that was her game changer, the one she was finalizing with Derek tonight. An idea, insane and audacious, began to form in the back of my mind. It was a terrible, beautiful, and utterly terrifying idea. I looked at the folder of screenshots, at their callous words, their smug faces. Her presentation was indeed going to be a game changer, just not in the way she imagined. When Sarah came home that night, smelling of expensive wine and another man's cologne, I was sitting in the dark, the faint glow of the television illuminating my face. She flinched when she saw me. "Marcus, you scared me." "I thought you'd be asleep." "Couldn't sleep," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Just thinking." "About what?" she asked, her guard up. I looked at her, at this woman I had loved for half my life, this stranger standing in my living room. "About presentations," I said, "and how important it is to have the right visuals." Part 3, The Architecture of Revenge. The week leading up to Sarah's presentation was the most surreal of my life. I was a man living a double life. On the surface, I was the supportive husband. I made her coffee in the morning, listened to her rehearse her talking points, and offered encouragement. "You're going to kill it, honey," I'd say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "They're going to be blown away." Inside, I was a different person entirely. I was a meticulous planner, a strategist, a man consumed by a single, all-encompassing goal. The thumb drive of her betrayal was my constant companion, a cold, hard talisman in my pocket. At night, after she fell asleep, I would retreat to my own office, the one in the basement, and work on my project. My first thought was to simply email the evidence to her boss, to his wife, to everyone. But that felt too simple, too impersonal. It lacked a certain panache. It lacked the theatricality that their betrayal deserved. No, this needed to be a public spectacle, a moment of reckoning that would be seared into their memories forever. Her presentation was on a Friday at her company's headquarters in their main conference room. It was a huge deal. The entire executive team would be there, along with the potential new clients. Sarah had even arranged for me to be there. "I want you to see me shine, Marcus," she had said, her voice filled with a self-congratulatory warmth that made me want to scream. "I couldn't have done this without your support." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. The plan was simple in its audacity. I would swap her meticulously crafted PowerPoint with a new one, a presentation of my own design, a chronological journey through her affair, told through her own words and pictures. A digital monument to her deceit. The technical aspect was the easy part. I'm an engineer after all. I know my way around a computer. Sarah practiced her presentation on her laptop every night. One evening, while she was in the shower, I made my move. It took less than 5 minutes. I copied her presentation file to my thumb drive, then replaced the file on her laptop with my own version, giving it the exact same file name. I then went into the file's properties and altered the modification date to match the original. To the casual observer, nothing had changed, but the file itself was now a ticking time bomb. The hardest part was creating the presentation itself. I spent hours staring at the screenshots, at the pictures, forcing myself to relive every painful detail. Each slide was a new chapter in my personal hell. I titled it Project X, a case study in synergy and deception. The first few slides were her original ones, a professional-looking title slide, an agenda, an introduction to the team. I wanted to lull them into a false sense of security. Then the fifth slide. It was a picture of her and Derek wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, a champagne flute in his hand. The title of the slide, Q3 Goals, a new approach to team building. The slides that followed were a brutal, relentless assault of evidence. Screenshots of their texts, juxtaposed with the dates of my business trips or family emergencies. Slide 6, Leveraging Asynchronous Communication for Maximum Impact. Below it, a text from Sarah to Derek. "Marcus is in Cleveland for 2 days. My place tonight." Slide 7, Identifying Key Stakeholders. Below it, a picture of Derek with a screenshot of an email from Sarah to him, detailing my work schedule for the next month. I even included the florist's receipt with the message from Derek. The final slide was the most devastating. It was a simple black screen with white text. It quoted one of Sarah's last messages to Derek, sent just 2 days prior. "Almost there. Once I get this promotion, I'll have the financial security to finally leave Marcus. He'll be fine. He's too predictable to do anything crazy." As I put the finishing touches on my masterpiece of destruction, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The rage and the grief were still there, but they had been channeled into a cold, focused purpose. I was no longer just a victim. I was the architect of her downfall. On the morning of the presentation, Sarah was a bundle of nervous energy. She laid out her best power suit, a crisp, navy blue number that I had always loved. "How do I look?" she asked, spinning in front of the mirror. "Like a senior vice president," I said, my voice betraying no emotion. She beamed at me, a brilliant, beautiful, and utterly false smile. "Wish me luck." "You won't need it," I replied, handing her the laptop bag. "You're unforgettable." I thought about backing out 1,000 times. What if I was wrong? What if this was too cruel? I could just confront her, go to a lawyer, and file for divorce. But then I remembered their words. He's too predictable. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my loyalty for weakness. They had no idea what a man is capable of when he has nothing left to lose. As I drove to her office building, a sense of calm washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. For months, I had been a character in their sordid little story, the clueless, predictable husband. Today, I was taking back the pen. Today, I was the one writing the ending. Part 4, the sound of a world crashing down. The conference room was exactly as I'd pictured it. A large, mahogany table, plush leather chairs, and a state-of-the-art projection screen that took up most of one wall. The air was thick with the scent of expensive coffee and ambition. I took a seat in the back, a silent observer in a suit that suddenly felt too tight. Sarah's boss, a stern-looking man named Mr. Henderson, was at the head of the table, flanked by the two potential clients. Derek was there too, sitting a few chairs down from Sarah, giving her a subtle, encouraging nod. The sight of him, so smug and self-assured, solidified any lingering doubts I had. Sarah stood at the podium, a picture of confidence and professionalism. She smiled warmly at the clients, her voice smooth and practiced as she began her introduction. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Miller, and today I'm going to walk you through a strategy that will not only meet your needs but will redefine the future of your brand." I watched her, a strange mix of pity and contempt swirling within me. She was good, I had to give her that. She was poised, articulate, and utterly convincing. For a moment, I saw the woman I had married, the brilliant, driven woman I had fallen in love with. Then she clicked to the next slide and my heart began to pound against my ribs. The first few slides went off without a hitch. The title slide, the agenda, the market analysis. The clients were nodding, Mr. Henderson was smiling. Derek looked like a proud co-conspirator. Sarah was in her element, her confidence growing with each click of the remote. "And that brings us to our goals for the next quarter," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "We believe in a new, more integrated approach to team building." She clicked the remote, and there it was. The picture of her and Derek in the hotel bathrobe filled the 10-foot screen. The title, Q3 Goals, a New Approach to Team Building, hung above them like a damning epitaph. A collective gasp went through the room. The silence that followed was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket of disbelief. Sarah froze, her mouth slightly agape, the color draining from her face. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. She clicked the remote again, frantically, but the next slide was even worse. Leveraging asynchronous communication for maximum impact, and below it the incriminating text message. Derek, across the table, looked like he had been punched in the gut. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. His eyes darted from the screen to Sarah, then to me, a flicker of recognition and terror in his gaze. Sarah fumbled with the laptop, her hands shaking so badly she could barely control the mouse. But it was too late. The damage was done. The story was unfolding, slide by brutal slide, for everyone to see. The affair, the lies, the mockery. It was all there, projected in high definition for her colleagues, her boss, and her potential clients to witness. Mr. Henderson, his face a thundercloud, slowly rose to his feet. His voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet. "Sarah, what is the meaning of this?" Sarah couldn't speak. She just stood there shaking, her carefully constructed world crashing down around her in a hail of pixels and humiliation. The clients were already gathering their things, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and disgust. "I think we've seen enough," one of them said, not even bothering to make eye contact with Sarah. Derek, meanwhile, was trying to make himself as small as possible, his eyes fixed on the table as if hoping it would swallow him whole. The final slide, the one with her text about leaving me, was the knockout blow. It hung in the air, a final, damning testament to her character. He's too predictable to do anything crazy. I met her eyes across the room. The shock and horror in them were slowly being replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. She finally understood. This was no accident. This was a deliberate, calculated act of destruction, and I was the architect. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. I didn't say a word. I just gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a final acknowledgement of the life we once had and the ashes that now remained. Then I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her in the wreckage of her own making. The sound of the heavy conference room door closing behind me was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Part 5, the fallout and the silence. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember the traffic, the route I took, or the music on the radio. My mind was a strange cocktail of adrenaline, triumph, and a deep, gut-wrenching sadness. The architect of her downfall, yes, but what had I really built? The rubble of a 15-year marriage. There was a grim satisfaction in what I had done, a sense of justice served cold and hard, but there was no joy. Just a vast, echoing emptiness. I walked into our house, the house that had been our home, and it felt like a museum of a life that was now over. Every picture on the wall, every piece of furniture was a ghost of a shared memory, now tainted by the poison of her betrayal. I didn't have to wait long. About an hour later, her car screeched into the driveway. She burst through the door, her face a grotesque mask of rage and tears. Her perfectly coiffed hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. The power suit now looked like a costume. "You," she hissed, her voice trembling with a fury so intense I thought she might physically attack me. "You bastard, you ruined me. You ruined us, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I just turned on the lights. "My career is over, everything I worked for gone, because of you, because you couldn't just leave quietly." And what was I supposed to do, Sarah? Just pack a bag and disappear so you and Derek could move into our house and live happily ever after? Did you really think I was that weak, that predictable? The word hung in the air between us, a test. Testament to her fatal miscalculation. "I hate you," she sobbed, the rage finally crumbling into a pathetic heap of self-pity. "I hate you so much. The feeling is mutual," I said, and the coldness of my own words surprised even me. The man who had loved this woman, who had built a life with her, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man carved out of grief and hardened by betrayal. What followed was a week of suffocating silence. We were two ghosts haunting the same house, communicating only through lawyers. She moved into the guest room, and the slam of her door was the only conversation we had. The fallout from the presentation was swift and brutal. Sarah was fired, of course. The company couldn't have a senior vice president whose personal life had become a public spectacle of scandal and deceit. The clients, naturally, had walked. Derek was also let go. I heard through the grapevine that his wife had filed for divorce the same day. 2 lives, 2 careers, 2 marriages, all immolated in the glow of a projector screen. My phone buzzed with texts from friends and family who had heard the news. The story had spread like wildfire. Some offered support, others condemnation for my methods. I ignored them all. This was between me and Sarah. In the quiet moments when the rage subsided, I was left with the crushing weight of what I had lost. I thought about the good times, the laughter, the shared dreams. Had it all been a lie, or had our love simply eroded over time, leaving a hollow shell that she had filled with another man? I found myself thinking about what might have been. What if I had confronted her quietly? What if we had gone to therapy? Could we have salvaged something from the wreckage? The thought was a fleeting ghost. Her words from the screenshots, her casual cruelty, always brought me back to the cold, hard reality of her betrayal. There was nothing left to save. One evening, I found a half-empty bottle of wine in the kitchen. It was her favorite, a Pinot Noir she'd said was for a special occasion. I poured myself a glass and went out to the back deck, the one I had built with my own 2 hands. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was beautiful, and it made me ache with a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical illness. I had won. I had exacted my revenge. I had stood up for myself. But as I sat there, sipping the wine that was meant for a celebration that would never happen, I didn't feel like a winner. I just felt alone. The silence of the house was no longer the silence of betrayal. It was the silence of an ending, and I had no idea what the next chapter was supposed to look like. Part 6, picking up the pieces of me. The divorce was surprisingly quick and clinical. With the mountain of evidence I had, there was no room for negotiation. She didn't fight me on the house. I think she wanted to be rid of the memories as much as I did. We sold it and split the proceeds, a final, transactional end to a life built on love. I watched the moving truck pull away with her belongings, a strange sense of finality washing over me. This chapter was well and truly over. I moved into a small apartment downtown, a minimalist space with clean lines and no ghosts. For the first few months, I just existed. I went to work, I came home, I ate takeout, and I watched old movies. The vibrant tapestry of my life had been reduced to a gray, monotonous thread. The hardest part was telling Maya. I called her at school, my voice heavy with a dread I couldn't hide. I told her everything, trying to be as gentle as possible, but there's no gentle way to tell your daughter that the family she knew is gone. She was quiet for a long time, and then she just said, "I'm so sorry, Dad." Her unwavering support was a lifeline in the darkness. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. I started going to the gym, not to build a revenge body, but because the physical exertion was a release for the anger and grief that still simmered beneath the surface. I started cooking for myself, finding a strange, meditative peace in the simple act of chopping vegetables and following a recipe. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had neglected in the fog of my marriage. One of my friends, a guy named Ben who had been through a messy divorce himself a few years back, gave me some advice that stuck with me. "You can't let her betrayal define you, Marcus," he'd said over a beer. "What you did, what she did, that's the past. The question is, who are you going to be now?" It was a good question. For so long, my identity had been wrapped up in being Sarah's husband, Maya's father, the steady, reliable man in the background. Now I had to figure out who Marcus was on his own. I started taking on more challenging projects at work, pouring my energy into my career. I designed a new bridge, a complex, elegant structure that became a point of pride for me. It was a tangible symbol of my ability to build something new, something strong, from the ground up. I even went on a few dates. They were awkward at first, fumbling conversations over coffee with women who were also navigating the choppy waters of middle-aged singledom. But it was a start. It was a reminder that there was still a world out there, a world beyond the wreckage of my marriage. I heard snippets about Sarah from mutual acquaintances. She had moved to another state, trying to start over. She was working in a lower-level marketing job, a shadow of her former high-flying self. I felt a flicker of something, not pity exactly, more like a detached sadness for the woman she could have been, for the life we could have had. But it was a fleeting emotion. Her choices were her own. My focus now had to be on my own choices. The revenge, in the end, was not the satisfying, movie-ending climax I had imagined. It was a necessary demolition, a clearing of the land so that something new could be built. The real victory wasn't the look on her face in that conference room. It was the quiet moments of peace I was starting to find in my new life. It was a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, looking out over the city from my apartment balcony. It was a phone call from Maya, her laughter filling the silence. It was the realization that I was going to be okay. That I was more than just a predictable, heartbroken husband. I was the architect of my own life, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked like a structure that was built to last. If this story hit home, if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal or the quiet satisfaction of taking back your own story, hit that like and subscribe button. I've got more tales of love, loss, and the messy business of being human coming your way. Drop a comment below. Was I right to get revenge, or should I have taken the high road? Forgive or forget. There's no right answer, but I want to hear your take. Tag a friend who needs to hear this story, or clip your favorite part and share it. Until next time, remember, sometimes you have to burn the old bridge down to build a new one.